Now, we've been talking about how economies break down, and we saw back in the 20s with Germany where we saw hyperinflation. We saw Zimbabwe in the late 2000s. We've seen Argentina where they've seen inflation, and now Venezuela. The IMF is reporting that they're going to be seeing 1,000,000% inflation, and it's by the year end, which really means they won't be able to use the currency at all. It'll be absolutely worthless. And this is what we're going to see happen here in the United States and around the world, because the debt level, the amount of currency that was created over this short period of time from 2008 up to 2018 was tremendous. And then add on that everything before that, what we're going to see is all these dollars, they're going to come home, because we see things breaking down in the Middle East. We see things completely breaking down in each and every country where the economy is not doing well. Now, to put this into perspective on how bad things are, according to financial writer Simon Black, the federal government is spending approximately $52,000 per second. Now, this, not last year's tax cuts, is the reason why the national debt has reached a record $21 trillion, which is more than America's gross domestic product, which is the GDP. Another ominous sign is that this year both Social Security and Medicare will have to draw down on their reserve funds to be able to pay benefits. The Social Security and Medicare trust funds will both soon be bankrupt, putting additional strains on the federal budget and the American taxpayers. Examples of fiscal irresponsibility on Capitol Hill is all over the place. I mean, it's really not that hard to find. When the economic crisis hits, there will be no choice but to cut spending and raise taxes. Of course, Congress is unlikely to raise taxes or cut benefits. Instead, it will rely on the Federal Reserve to do the dirty work via the inflation tax. The inflation tax is the worst type of tax because it is both hidden and regressive. Increasing federal debt will also put pressure on the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates low, and they're already talking about keeping the rates low around 2020. And they'll keep them low to prevent federal interest payments on the debt from skyrocketing. Eventually, the Fed's monetization of the debt will lead to hyperinflation and rejection of the dollar's world reserve currency status. I mean, when we start to really understand and start to look at what is going on here, we realize why countries are dumping treasuries, why they're buying gold. I mean, Russia is the perfect example. Russia has been liquidating the U.S. Treasury holdings. They've been buying gold, and they haven't stopped. China has been purchasing gold. India has been purchasing gold. There's a lot of countries that have been repatriating their gold, and they're doing this because they understand what is happening. Now, remember, the central bankers, they had a plan. They wanted globalization. They wanted a one-world government. They wanted complete control. They wanted an even playing field with all the countries. This is why they're having the refugees come up, to blend everyone together, to say, hey, every single place is exactly the same. There's no differences whatsoever, and we can't have one country getting pay that's higher than another country. We have to bring them all to a level playing field. That was their goal. And they were going to have an event to do this, which is called a war, to cover up their entire collapse, and they were going to move the system to another area. And this area was China. They've been preparing for this. They've been creating the correct atmosphere to have manufacturing, to have a trade system, to have the exchanges. It was all put into place a long time ago. And what they had to do over time was they had to move the jobs out of the U.S. And if you really look back in time, this is what they've been doing, slowly but surely, because this was part of their plan. They didn't do it in a year or two. They took many, many years to do this, so no one really noticed. And then, they created things like NAFTA and other things where they said this was going to benefit the people, we're going to bring more jobs here, and it actually did the opposite. Remember, whenever government or central banks come out and say, oh, we're doing this for you and this is what it is, it's always the opposite. The Affordable Care Act, it's not affordable. The Patriot Act has nothing to do with patriots. Everything that they talk about is always the opposite. Now the International Monetary Fund is out there and they're saying that the U.S. dollar is overvalued. China's yuan is in line with fundamentals, and nearly half of global current account balances are now excessive, adding to growth risks and trade tensions. And they're saying that certain countries are in too much debt. What are these countries? Well, United States, Britain, Turkey, Argentina, and many more. And the IMF is saying that there are major, major problems. Remember, the IMF has been talking about, how these tariffs are going to wreck the economy, how they're seeing growth slow. It has nothing to do with the tariffs. What this really means is Trump has been ripping apart their globalization plan, and they don't like this. Remember, central banks, it's in their title, centralization, central banks. They want everything centralized. They want complete control over everything with the World Trade Organization, with the creation of currency, with the control of interest rates and everything else. They have it all centralized. This is exactly what they wanted from the beginning. They wanted a one world government. They wanted all this together, and basically, this is what they've been shooting for many, many years. Now, what Trump is doing, he is de-globalizing the system. The globalization effort of the last several decades most benefited the owner class, not the everyday person. Factories were moved to places where $2 a day workers were unlimited, while cheap petroleum permitted transportation of finished products to markets on container ships and trucks. Now, think about this. Everything was moved off to other locations around the world where they were getting $2 day workers to create these products. So they were moving the manufacturing plants out of the United States. Now, remember, the United States, because of unions and things like that, those workers were receiving something like $25 per hour. And in these small towns, what happened? As these manufacturers left, the workers couldn't find jobs. Since there were no taxes coming in, what did we see? Well, we saw layoffs. We saw school systems funded by these taxes. They fell into decay. Towns fell into decay. And things started to look really bad in America. And if you travel the country, you can see this in many different areas. But the owner class absolutely loved globalization. Why? Because it benefited them, and it didn't benefit the everyday person. It didn't benefit America at all. And then all of a sudden, Trump is dropped into the situation. He disrupted trade agreements. He put forth tariffs, sanctions, threatened almost everyone, trashing the globalized status quo. And all these elite, they became very, very angry. And you can see why they're out there, and this includes the IMF, the Fed, other world leaders who are part of this globalization system, where they're saying that these tariffs are going to destroy the economy. Yes, it's going to destroy what they have been creating all along, and this is what they're very worried about, because they have a lot of money invested in this, a lot of time invested in this. And Trump, he's pissing off all the right people. And he's pissing off many individuals. So why is he doing this? Why is he changing everything? Well, the easy answer is to bring manufacturing, to bring jobs back to the U.S. Can this be done overnight? No, it's completely impossible. But over time, it can be done. There are certain other things that have to be done way before that. The central banking system needs to be removed, just like globalization, just like the World Trade Organization. And he's in the process of doing this. Not just him himself. There's a lot of patriots behind this, a lot of individuals that are helping out on this. And by doing this, it can restore what we once had here. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen overnight. A lot of people want this to happen overnight, but it's just really not going to happen. And when we look at what is happening here, you can see at every turn, these individuals are getting angrier and angrier because what they see happening here is their system is being broken down. It's being ripped apart. And this is just the beginning stages. You can't do everything all at once. It's just, first of all, it won't work. You need to take it in stages because there's always going to be pushback from the deep state, from the central banks. They're always going to try to stop what is happening. And you can see right now that they're trying to stop this. And they will bring the economy down to try to stop this and blame this entire thing on Trump and the patriots. And we can see right now, this is where we're getting the two narratives right now. And this is why Trump came out and pointed the finger at the Fed and made this small little remark about raising interest rates and letting the Fed do, what they feel is right. He's setting them up. It's actually a really good plan. And the central bank is on the other side, and they're preparing their narrative with tariffs. The trade economy is now slowing because of this, and they're building this up and building this up. And we can see right now they're using, and I'm talking about the central banks, they're using whatever method they possibly can to stop what Trump is doing and the patriots, what they're doing here. They know that if he continues on this path, globalization that they planned on will be completely disrupted. Just like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This was their end game agreement among nations where they were going to have a higher court sit above the governments, which would allow them to dictate to governments what they wanted. And they thought they were going to move in that direction. That was their plan. That's where they thought they were going. Now everything is being reversed, and they don't know what to do. And the only thing they have left, really, is to bring down the economy and try to blame Trump, make sure he doesn't get into office, and put back everything that he's done. They're feeling that they're at a point right now where they can repair what he did, but if he gets elected to another term, they know it's completely game over because he'll have even more time to destroy everything that they've done, and you can do it very, very quickly at that point because the process has already been started. So what we see happening right now is that this entire globalization, this one world government, this central bank system, it is under threat from Trump and the patriots, and they are beginning to get angry. They understand what's happening, and they're trying to figure out a way to stop him. And one way is to bring down the economy. And I think this is the only thing they really have left. And I think this is where they're making their move. And this is why the Fed is hiding the data. This is why they're recalculating and showing us a different yield curve, hiding the balance sheet information. They're setting everything up so nobody looks at them. Everyone looks at Trump. Trump is now doing the opposite. I'm sure from what has been happening so far with the little statement that he made in an interview, they've been gathering evidence. They have a lot of information. They know what's going on. They know what's been happening in the past, and they're going to use this against the elite, the central banks, when it is time. But one thing is for sure, we will be going through a major, major transition because the economy that we're in today, well, you don't want to continue on with it. There's no reason for it because you'll end up in the same exact spot. Allowing the central bankers to restart their system from scratch and loan governments currency with interest attached, you're just back to where you started. The only way for us to get out of this is to get rid of the central banks, just like Andrew Jackson. Get rid of the central banks. Now, that doesn't mean there's going to be other forces that are going to try to get the central banks back in. There are always going to be forces like this. And maybe years and years down the line, they might succeed just like they did in 1913. But for right now, the plan is to get rid of them. And everyone